What is good, my beloved bots? Not sure if you remember me, but today I'm finally bringing you the long-awaited mouse controller V3. Throughout this mouse controller series, we quickly found out that making a fully working mouse the size of the tip of your thumb was quite the challenge. After buying, testing, and modifying 15 to 20 different mice to try to get our desired thumb mouse size, we finally came to the conclusion it's near impossible to modify an off-the-shelf computer mouse down to just the size of your thumb. And this is why this video took so goddamn long. We designed and manufactured our very own optical mouse sensor board that is smaller than a dime. While I knew absolutely zero about electronic PCB design and manufacturing and all the headache I would soon encounter, it was so worth it. Mouse Controller V3 is truly an industry changer, and going back to a standard controller with a standard analog stick is quite literally impossible. So let's get some of the obvious changes out of the way. In my last video, I asked you bots for some advice on what you would like to see added to Mouse Controller V3. As the concept of this controller is to integrate mouse functionality into a controller, a scroll wheel seemed like an obvious addition. As your boy is the creator of the original scroll wheel controller featured by Flea, this mod was an easy task. But this time, instead of placing it in one of the grips, we relocated the scroll wheel to the top center of the controller. This way, it can still easily be reached by your middle finger, the finger used on a mouse when using the scroll wheel. I'm telling you, scroll wheel on controllers needs to become a standard from Sony and Microsoft, especially for you Peace Control Kyles. As we stated at the beginning of the video, we were able to drastically reduce the overall size of the thumb mouse by manufacturing our very own PCB for the optical sensor in red LED. See our last video if you would like more of an explanation on what these components do. Not only that, we were able to massively reduce the size of the optical lens that sits under the optical sensor. The optical lens is usually over an inch in length and a centimeter in height. Our custom optical lens is just a few millimeters in diameter. Shrinking the thumb mouse to the smallest possible size is so important, as we are already at a massive disadvantage with the limited amount of surface space on a controller for a mousepad. The smaller the thumb mouse is, the more space we are given to use it. By shrinking the thumb mouse to around the size of a dime from the previous thumb mouse on Mouse Controller V2, that was about the size of a quarter, the tiny amount of space we have on the controller to use as a mousepad becomes more and more feasible. One of the major comments on my last video were people saying, why not just use a touchpad, or this is just a Steam controller. While we have built an entirely separate prototype of the mouse controller that uses a touchpad, the results were nowhere near as impressive as using an optical sensor from a mouse. For example, if you have ever used a touchpad, or even comparing it to the touchscreen on your phone, while the tracking is quite accurate, your thumb gliding directly on the screen or touchpad creates friction and causes a slight resistance. Applying this resistance to precision aiming, we experience choppiness from this friction. A mouse, on the other hand, is designed to glide over the mousepad. We equipped our thumb mouse with Teflon mouse skates, which emulated mouse movement so much better than we could on a touchpad. In the future though, I'm going to try and create a touchpad type stylus using these Teflon mouse gates. It could be a viable solution, but for now, optical sensors have provided us much greater accuracy in range of motion. When I first built the original mouse controller prototype, my plan was to modify a standard controller to have as much flat surface area as possible to emulate a full-size mousepad as close as possible. I thought, since a mousepad is quite large, I needed as much space as I could physically fit. This was definitely the wrong thought process, as your thumb has a much smaller range of motion than your entire hand and arm. For example, if I stretch my thumb as much as I possibly can, it has about a 4-inch by 4-inch reach, and I have very large hands. This wasn't ideal though, as again I was forcing my thumb to reach that far, which was extremely uncomfortable and quickly resulted in pain in my hand and thumb. Comfortably, my thumb can rotate in about a 3-inch radius. On Mouse Controller V2, the mousepad was about 5 inches at all corners. Watching back those videos though, I really only utilized half that mousepad space. So with Mouse Controller V3, the mousepad is only about 3 inches tall and 3 inches wide. This made the overall aesthetic of the controller much cleaner and much more functional. Another major change that was made to the thumb mousepad was its overall positioning. On Mouse Controller V2, the mousepad sat on the very top of the controller, right around the height of the analog sticks. We found that the mousepad was sitting way too high up. By it being so elevated, when gripping the controller, it reduced the range of motion my thumb could complete, as it forced my thumb to sit in a more flat position when gripping the controller. So we actually took some inspiration from the Steam controller. On the Steam controller, the grips actually sit above the touchpads, which allows your thumbs to curve downwards instead of sitting in that more flat position. In turn, it gives them a much greater range of motion. We emulated this elevated grip orientation by, instead of placing the mousepad on the stock faceplate of the controller, we dremeled out that faceplate, completely removed the right analog stick and all the face button components, and sat the mousepad directly over the controller's main board. This recessed the mousepad almost an inch into the controller. This was one of the biggest design wins over Mouse Controller V2. The last main comment I consistently saw that you guys were requesting was for me to try out Aim Labs. For you that don't know, Aim Labs is a program that tests your accuracy. The scores you are seeing were out of 10 tries, but please keep in mind, I'm horrible at video games. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm a bot. Over the years, I've become a primarily KBM player, but before switching to keyboard and mouse, I used a controller my entire life. So again, the reason I'm telling you to keep this in mind is I've only used the mouse controller for about a week. With that being said, my KBM scores were by far the best, which makes sense. Mouse and keyboard isn't the preferred pro gaming peripheral for no reason. What surprised me though was the mouse controller versus a standard controller. I consistently got a higher score of at least 10 to 15k points with the mouse controller over that standard controller, which I guess is a perfect way to sum up the mouse controller in its whole. While obviously it's not as accurate or will ever be as accurate to the gold standard of traditional mouse and keyboard, it is definitely a massive accuracy upgrade to the standard analog stick controller we have used for the last 20 years. An optical sensor over an analog stick can and does provide a better experience when it comes to shooters, especially first-person shooters. The incredible limited range of motion an analog stick provides has become straight up unacceptable in modern shooters, which is why now more than ever, more and more people complaining about aim assist. Aim assist is a great thing for controller players, but aim assist has gotten to the point where it is so OP to compensate for those crappy analog sticks, it's starting to feel like cheating. With the thumb mouse, aim assist could still be a thing, but can be drastically reduced, as the overall accuracy of the thumb mouse is greater than the analog stick, but not as accurate as your traditional mouse. The thumb mouse truly feels like a natural evolution for controller aim. So that's it for today's video, you bots. I'm really sorry for such a long gap in my upload cycle. I didn't even get the chance to thank you guys. We hit 100k loyal bot mofos. That is insane. I love every single one of you. Later, you bots.